Okay, so we are talking about midpoint formula and distance formula today. One thing you need to know about this class is I'm not going to ever make you memorize a formula. You always get a formula sheet on any test or quiz that we take. Okay, at this day and age, I know that if you're ever out in the real world and you need to know a formula, you're going to Google it. So I just want to make sure that you know how to use formulas. Okay, so I will give you the formulas. You have to know where to put the numbers and which formula to actually use in each situation. So looking at midpoints first, the midpoint is right in the middle of a segment. It divides it into two congruent segments. So AM is going to be the same length as MB on this picture. This would be, let's draw arrows to what we're talking about. So the midpoint is the actual M right there. And segment bisector, that is the object that does the cutting in half. So in this situation, it's the orange line, line T. That is the segment bisector. Bisect means to cut in half. Okay, so this is an example that you may see in the homework. It says, y is the midpoint of x, z. So if y is the midpoint, we know we have two equal parts. Here's the symbol that we use to show that two segments are the same. You put the same number of dashes on the segment. So you could have 3 dashes and 3 dashes, or 1 dash and 1 dash. Okay. It says the length of xy. So over here we have 40.5. Let's label that on the picture. So then we know what is yz. Also 40.5. So now we can answer this question, which is how long is xz? Yeah, it's 81. You just add them together. Okay. So midpoint means it's going to go right in the middle, which means you have two equal parts. Okay. We just talked about what those symbols mean. It means they are congruent. So let's use that word because we're going to use that all year long. That means equal. They're congruent to each other. All right, so when we had situations like this in the previous section, we were taking part plus the other part and then set it equal to the whole length. Do you remember that? Okay. In this situation, we don't know how long the whole segment is, but we do know, what does this mean again? Yeah, that they're the same. They're equal to each other. So what could our equation be that we write down? Yeah. Perfect. If you know the segments are equal, then say they're equal in terms of algebra. You put an equal sign between them. So we're always looking for those symbols, those geometry clues, which in this case are the dashes on the segments. And now we know how to set up our algebra. So we can solve this at this point. Now, 8 is not the answer. Why?
Because we don't have to sub it into the equation.
We have to substitute it in. They asked for the length of segment SM. Okay, they want to know how long is this segment right here. Well, we just figured out that x is 8. So if we substitute that in, 5 times 8 and then subtract 9, what do we get? That is the answer. So make sure you're reading the directions on those. Questions on midpoints? Okay, here's how we're going to do this on a graph. And again, I'm going to give you all formulas that you would ever need. Okay, so what if they wanted the midpoint between these two? Okay, we're not going to graph it. Okay, the formula is going to give us the answer. So here's our midpoint formula right here. It's on the formula sheet that I'm going to give you. Use this to find the midpoint of these points right here. So here's the work that I need to see when it comes to the test. Okay, here's our formula. We're going to say the midpoint is equal to, this is a comma. I always write down what I call the skeleton, the stuff that never is going to change no matter what. So we're always going to divide both of them by 2, and we're always going to add on the top. That way I don't accidentally put minus signs there, which happens quite often. Okay. On the first fraction, we're adding together the x values. What are the x values? Yeah. 3 and 1. Okay, it always goes x, y, so those are your two x values. 3 plus 1, we drop them in. Leaving the other two numbers to be our y values, -4 and 0. Okay, I need to see you actually putting the numbers into the formula. Okay, now we're just going to simplify so we can say what our answer is. The midpoint would end up being, so let's think about it, 3 plus 1 and then divide by 2. 2. -4 plus 0 and then divide by 2. -2. So if you were to plot those 2 points, the point right in between them would be 2, -2. You don't have to memorize the formula again. It's the third or fourth time I've said that, but you just have to know where to place your numbers. Am I going too fast? Okay, all we have left is distance formula, which looks scary, but I promise you it's not. First, we're going to start out by talking about the distance between 2 points when it's easy to just look at it and know. So looking at this one, how long is AB? Heard somebody say it quietly. 11. How long is CD?
6.
Questions? You're just counting how many squares are between each. Okay, so that's easy to find the distance between 2 points if they're vertical or horizontal. If they're not, and they're on a slant in between them, then we have to use this formula right here. Okay, and there should be a D equals in front of it, so add that to that. Let's say we want to find the distance between these 2 points right here. Okay, now I highly recommend writing down what I call, again, the skeleton. Okay, the stuff that's not going to change. So we have D equals long square root. There's pluses and minuses, so that's why it's wise to go through and do this part first so that you make sure that you get everything in the right spot. Because if you're just plugging along and writing it down like a train, you have to look here and then back to the formula and the numbers. This makes it a lot easier. So this stuff never changes. There's always the parentheses, the squareds, the pluses, and the minuses. In the first set of parentheses, you're going to put your x values. It won't matter what order you put them in because you're going to end up squaring them, so the negatives go away all the time. Okay? So what are the two x values? And what are the y values? So all I did was put in the numbers where they go. I don't have to worry about making sure I do them in the right order. I'm not jumping between here and then writing a parenthesis. Skeleton first, drop your numbers in. A lot less mistakes happen if it goes this way. Here's how you simplify. This is what I want to see for work. We're just going to simplify what's in the parentheses. So 4 minus 3, 1. 1 minus -6, 7, because it turns to plus. Okay, now let's square those. Got 1 plus 49, and then we do square root of 50. If I remember correctly, it's 7.07. Somebody double check me though. We're good? Just a reminder, when you're doing these problems, if you happened to end up with this, what would the next step be? What's this one? Yep.
9.
Why isn't it negative 9?
Negative.
You're taking negative 3 times negative 3. Okay, don't let that screw you up. There are going to be situations like that. It's always going to be positive when you square a number. Okay, so this one would end up being 25, which is 5. But just be careful of those negatives on your homework. Questions on either formula? Okay.